Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Monday, and all of our guests today, including Noodles, standing by, sponsored by Basant Motors. Ready to find your next vehicle? Visit Basant Motors today to experience the difference for yourself. The friendly team looks forward to helping you drive home in the perfect vehicle for your needs and budget. Getting to your destination starts with them. Stop by their dealership located at 16315 Fraser Highway in Surrey, or check them out online at Basant Motors, BASANTmotors.com. Game 1 of the 2025 Stanley Cup Final takes place Wednesday in Edmonton. Oilers against the Panthers. Here to talk about that and all matters hockey. Noodles, Jamie McLennan from TSN. Thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you guys doing today?
Very well, Great. Very well. You're a goaltender. Tell us about the goaltending battle in that Stanley Cup Final. Bobrovsky versus Skinner.
A lot closer than people think,
yes.
Especially starting the playoffs on paper. We know what Bobrovsky did last year. He raised the Stanley Cup. I thought he was a Conn Smythe finalist type of situation heading into the finals. Stuart Skinner starts the playoffs, and even down the stretch, he was injured, and Calvin Pickard played the lion's share. Skinner starts the playoffs, was 0-2 and was terrible, as well as his team. It wasn't just him. And all of a sudden, he's found a groove. Now, the biggest thing with Stuart Skinner is, I say it respectfully, it's feast or famine. You either get this amazing performance or you get, 5 or 6 goals against. But his resilience has been impressive. And in 5 of 6 of his last 6 games, 5 of them he's been fantastic in. So I think it's a lot closer than you think. The team's playing a lot better in front of him defensively, so he doesn't get exposed side to side and opened up, that type of stuff. And if you look at Bobrovsky, he's been stable. Like he gives the Panthers a chance to win every night. Now, they've won some games 6-1, so it really doesn't matter. But in those games, if you look at it, I'll give you an example. Game 7 against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yes, they won that game massively, 6-1. But the Maple Leafs had 3 breakaways in the first period. Now, it was Lawton, Lorentz, and Nylander. Had it been Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, score might have looked different. That game might have looked different. But Bobrovsky was really good when he needed to be. So that's the biggest challenge for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I will say this. Darcy Kemper had given up 5 goals once this season. The Oilers got to him like 3 or 4 games in a row where it was 5+. Aiden Hill is a Stanley Cup winning goaltender. His game had stabilized down the stretch, and the Oilers got to him in 5 games. Last series against Ottinger was the best goaltender statistically going into that series. As far as in the playoffs, he had 8 quality starts. And you saw what happened to the point where DeBoer pulled him in that last game. So the Oilers have had an ability to get to the goaltenders. We'll see if they're able to get to Bobrovsky.
You mentioned Stuart Skinner moving side to side, a weakness. What's Sergei Bobrovsky's weakness? Because the last few years, there's a lot of people who aren't sure if there is one.
Well, I don't know if there's a weakness when he's on his game. When he's off his game, that blocker side, there's a few that squeak through the body in the blocker. I've seen it a few times here in the playoffs. They are targeting high blocker. I think the only thing that Bobrovsky, will get frustrated with is traffic. And that's the biggest challenge, especially against the Vegas Golden Knights. The Edmonton Oilers overwhelmed Aiden Hill with traffic and, accidentally on purpose bumping him and keeping him in his net and him fighting for sight lines. I think that's what they've got to do against Bobrovsky. I don't think there's one particular thing that you could circle and go, geez, he's deficient at this, because I think he's a very well-rounded goaltender, extremely flexible, great lateral movement, good glove hand, good demeanor, works hard in the net. But I do think if you can make life difficult for him, it's a lot tougher to find pucks. And even if you can bang away at rebounds, now that's a 50-50 battle. So I think that's the biggest challenge for the Oilers, is to keep him in his net, and that way he can't be as aggressive.
Jamie, we got a goaltender out here, Arturs Silovs, red hot. 5 shutouts in the American Hockey League playoffs. Abbotsford over Texas, 2-0. The easy thing is to guarantee him a spot in Vancouver next year and just say, hey, he's been great. But it doesn't work like that, Jamie, does it? I mean, he's not facing NHL shooters. He's doing really well, but it is a really good story out here. Silovs in the American Hockey League playoffs.
Well, and he's not 32 years old either.
Yeah.
Right. So he's still a young goaltender, working on his craft. And I'll be honest, you're right, 100%. And what I mean by that is the AHL success doesn't always translate to National Hockey League success. And I remember in Toronto, Garrett Sparks had won top goaltender in the AHL, and they gave him an opportunity, and he never, ended up being an NHL goaltender. I think Silovs is an NHL goaltender. I actually thought, and maybe I was overthinking it, but I thought there would be a team that might offer sheet him last summer just to, mess with the cap situation of the Vancouver Canucks, based on where they were, based on the health of Demko. And it didn't happen, and Silovs was still trying to find his legs at the NHL every day. We saw what he did in the playoffs last year, and I thought he was fantastic. But you got to be able to do it nightly. So he's got a lot of ability. I think, when you look at his skill set, I think he has a quality skill set to potentially be a number one in the NHL, but you've got to prove it. And they do have to give him a runway at some point. I don't know when that is going to be. I think obviously the jury's out on Demko with his health and the consistency there. I look at it, there might be an opportunity for him to be an NHL goaltender, but it's not going to be handed to him. He's got to go and earn it.
Absolutely. Your thoughts on Ottinger getting pulled 7 minutes in, 2 shots, 2 goals. Peter DeBoer did not back down a day after, and he said, hey, look, here's why I did it. What did you think of Ottinger getting pulled like that?
I had no problem with the pull, but I also felt he should have gone right back in a shift or two later. Because what you do sometimes to jar your team is you'll pull your goaltender, you read everybody the riot act, you calm everything down, and you put the goaltender back in, who is your breadwinner, who is your number one. This isn't a tandem situation. Ottinger is their guy. They just signed him to an 8-year extension. So what disappointed me about this is you read the riot act to everybody else, and you say, get your head out of your rear end, let's get going, and you tell them to go out and play, and you leave him on the bench. So he doesn't get an opportunity to get his head out of his rear end and battle back and show, his resolve. That's the only thing that, again, from a former goaltender, and I'm a goalie hugger, I thought that DeBoer could have given him an opportunity. I thought it was peculiar at the end of the series to run him over with the bus and then back up over top of him as well.
Yep.
You could have easily just said, you know what, I played a hunch. It didn't work out. I didn't think he had the greatest series, but we're going to, assess everything over the summer, and Jake's our guy moving forward, and that's it. But instead, Peter, rightfully so, he was just pointing out stats, saying 7 out of his last 8, I believe, have not been good against the Edmonton Oilers. And I played a hunch and it didn't work. The Oilers ended up winning. But you have to kind of pick up the pieces. And even in Ottinger's media the other day, he said he hadn't talked to DeBoer yet, but he wants to learn from it, all that type of stuff. I think it'll be squashed. I think it's DeBoer flies to wherever he is in Michigan, and they have a beer this summer and say, hey, you're my guy. Let's work on this moving forward. I do believe you've got some growth there, some runway to grow. But in the end, I just didn't love the optics of it. But I also believe he should have been pulled, but you could have put him right back in, and that might have had the same effect on the team.
Hey, Jamie, back to the Stanley Cup Final. Is it just me, but Brad Marchand, does he not look extremely comfortable, like he fits right in with the Florida Panthers? And did you expect that?
Well, I expected him to fit in because he's the type of guy who, as you guys know in Vancouver, you hate to play against him, but you want him on your team because he's a glue guy. He's a great leader. Even talking to my buddy Drew McGinley, who played with him in Boston, he said, this guy works his rear end off. He's in unbelievable shape. He's a great pro. He's a big personality. And I think when you look at what Marchand did when he first went to Florida, he was injured, and it took him a little bit to settle in. But once he settled in, his personality came out. And, this is a guy who's been a captain in the NHL. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's won on massive platforms. And I don't think he was afraid of the moment. He wasn't just going to blend in. what he was is I'm going to use my skill set, but also my personality. And the guys gravitated to him. And I would argue they don't get by the Toronto Maple Leafs if Marchand wasn't a big part of that series. And then, the Carolina thing Carolina just didn't push back that much. But Marchand he's been fantastic for the playoffs. And I think almost like a breath of fresh air for that team that, now it's 3 times in a row they've gone to the finals. So they played a lot of hockey, but Marchand is an engine behind the scenes driving them.
Okay, and as we wrap, I don't know why I'm asking this. You're from Edmonton. You grew up idolizing Grant Fuhr, but we're not going to have you on for another couple of weeks. Who wins this series, Jamie?
I've picked it wrong the whole time.
Oh, good.
And you're right. I grew up idolizing Furzy, but I wasn't an Oilers fan. I think I've told you that. Eddie Meal was my favorite goalie. I loved Mike Liut. I tell my friends this story, like when they were in their heyday in the 80s, they were a dynasty. I didn't go. I missed a cup parade because I was like, I'll just go next year. Like, that's how weird it was. You're like, they win every time. Like, so it was, my buddies are diehard Oilers fans. I have friends in both sides. Keep in mind, I've got Roberto Luongo, Greg Campbell, Brian McCabe. I know Bill Zito. So I've got as much allegiance to the Florida Panthers as I do the Edmonton Oilers, if not more. I do feel like the Oilers have a slight edge just based on maybe we'll call it destiny. But I don't sleep on this Panthers team, man. They know how to win. They know how to play. They know how to break down their opponent. All I would say, and I've told all of my friends this, and I just got off the phone actually with somebody from Florida, and I say it's Game 7 coin flip. That's how I feel. And I'm honestly, and I'm not chickening out on the question. I feel like Edmonton might be a slight favorite, but I just don't sleep on this Florida team. And I can see this going the distance, and it might even taking overtime. And at that point, it's just a coin flip where, you get a lucky goal or it hits a skate or just a favorable bounce. But that's how evenly matched I think these teams are and what they're capable of.
I think you are chickening out. We want a prediction here. Come on, let's go.
Okay, so at the starting the playoffs, even at the starting of this year, I wrote down on a piece of paper, my Stanley Cup Final was the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Winnipeg Jets.
Okay,
and I
never
had the
mind.
Lightning winning it. I've been wrong.
Wrong.
Toronto Maple Leafs, Florida. I'm like, I think the Leafs can do it this time. They lose. I'm thinking, geez, LA's gonna. I think LA may have a chance against Edmonton. Edmonton takes care of them. Well, they're not gonna get by Vegas. They take care of Vegas. Like, Dallas. I think Dallas can win the cup. I keep betting it, not against them, just going, I don't know if this Edmonton team is going to be stopped with McDavid and Draisaitl. So I am leaning towards Edmonton, but I'm putting a little asterisk beside it saying, I don't sleep on this Florida team. They know how to win. They've proven it, and they know how to dismantle teams. So they've done it. So I have slight edge to Edmonton only because of the maybe destiny factor.
I'll never ask you for a prediction again. That's it. That's the last time.
Done.
Thanks for this, Jamie.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. We'll chat soon.
You bet.